Well, as parents, we all want to give our kids the world. And for many families who are fortunate enough, that includes giving them a step up on the property ladder.
According to an LJ Hooker survey, 4 in 5 Aussie parents say they're willing to help their children buy a home. So if you're in the position to do so, what's the better option, a gift or a loan from the bank of mum and dad? To break it all down, we've got our personal finance content creator, Ravi Sharma. Great to have you with us again, Ravi. So 4 out of 5 Aussie parents seem willing to give their kids a helping hand to buy a property. Are you surprised by that stat?
I think that number's trended up quite rapidly over the last 10, 15 years. It is surprising when you put it on paper, 80%, but maybe there's 80% wanting to help, but can all 80% actually help is probably the better question.
Good point. Okay, the first one is a gift. Pros and cons of gifting money.
Well, look, if you go down the path of gifting, it's a pretty seamless process. You've just got to make sure that it's actually written down, that this is an actual gift. And the biggest pro with going down the gift side of things is a larger deposit, which a lot of lenders actually prefer, and they get favourable terms for whoever's taking out the loan as well. So really simple to do, and it's a one-off transaction. It doesn't mean that the property that the mum and dad have is at risk either, which is a really big benefit.
Yeah.
What about giving the money as a loan? I mean, should you have an agreement? Should it be legal?
Yeah, definitely have an agreement, and it needs to be bulletproof. And the reason for that is because it can be a major strain on family relationships as well. When money gets involved with family, it's a slippery slope, and that's why we need to be proper with all the documentation as well.
So you should go, when you say proper, should you go to a lawyer and get it written up?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say get all the professionals in place. You don't want to, cut corners with something like that. And one of the biggest benefits with something like, going down and getting into the market a lot earlier means that you can spend more time in the market, which is exactly what we want for our money to grow.
Yeah, so what are the drawbacks of a loan?
Well, you've got to think about, if you make a mistake or you default on your repayments, now your parents' property is at risk. And that's something that holds a lot of parents back from going down the loan avenue. But that's probably the biggest drawback in this scenario.
So the bank could come after your parents' property if you
default.
Pay the repayments. Okay, a lot of people are watching this and saying, I either don't believe in helping my kids, they should do it on their own, or I don't have the money to do that. What do you suggest for them?
I think with parents, we grow up with limiting beliefs sometimes that, debt is bad, and there's certain things you've just been taught throughout school. And I think the biggest gift that parents can actually give kids is allow them to go out there and, test out those investing muscles, whether it's, little apps that can round up, or whether it's just education that they can go out there and achieve anything, but they've got to go out there and get educated before they do it. That's probably the biggest gift they can give kids.
Yeah, knowledge is key. Thanks, Ravi. Appreciate it.
Managing your money can sometimes feel like a minefield, especially when everyone's got a different opinion on what you should be doing with it. So, what are the things you should never do?
Well, we will try and answer that in the latest in our series, I Would Never. And today we're asking what the do's are from a personal finance expert when it comes to handling your dollars. For more, personal finance guru Ravi Sharma joins us live in the studio. Good morning to you. You say you would never buy a home to live in as your first property.
Yeah, exactly. I think people make that mistake where they go, there's so many incentives to buy my first home, let's go and do that. But my borrowing capacity basically goes to waste. So I would rather go and invest in high cash flow, high growth properties, build out that wealth, and then come back and buy the dream home when you can actually afford it.
Okay, you would never take advice from someone that isn't an expert.
I think we have all of these people in our lives, the random uncle at the barbecues that tell us we should do X, Y, and Z, but have never done it in their lives. So I would only stick to advice from the professionals or people who've done it before. And, if your goals are aligned with that, then that's what you should follow, but not just some random advice that maybe your Uber driver gave you.
Yeah, or something that worked many, many years ago and may not be relevant. You'd never save 20% deposit.
Yeah, so we're under this false pretense that we think that we have to follow the rules that were in play 30 years ago, which is we only have one option, which is 20% as a deposit. But now we have so many lenders, institutions, and so many schemes out there that allow us to, purchase a home with a lot less than 20%. There's things like lender's mortgage insurance, but that's what your broker can tell you about. But there are options to get in. And by the time you save the 20%, the market's moving even faster than what you can save. So it makes it really difficult to get into the market.
This one feels like a no-brainer, but not always followed, right? Never spend more than you make.
I just can't believe how many people still don't get this. It's, using a credit card to go on a holiday to impress people you don't actually like. And it's the same thing with things you buy. It just makes no sense. So just spend money you have, live within your means, and you can do this pretty comfortably.
And finally, never live without a budget. How do you do a budget?
Well, I've talked about this before. It's the 50-30-20 ratio. It keeps it really simple as a framework. So 50% go towards your shelter, your bills, the things that are necessities. 30% go to your wants, so the sneaky Uber Eats or going out on the weekend, and then 20% towards investing. But the ones that make a lot of wealth, especially if they're young in their 20s and 30s, they try and get that 20% as high as possible. So living with parents for as long as possible is probably the way to go.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Yeah.
With that,
If you
get
can.
to that point in life and your kids are just starting to hang around a little bit too long, Ravi, you just ruined it.
So you can blame me.
And of course, we remind viewers to always seek professional advice when dealing with finances.
Well, from property to shares, when it comes to growing your money, knowing where to put your hard-earned savings can be confusing.
And for some people, that's enough to put them off completely. Currently, less than half of Australians, about 48%, are investing, with many not knowing where to begin.
So to break it all down for us, we're joined by personal finance content creator Ravi Sharma. Morning to you. Time's obviously very tough for Aussies right now, so everyone wants to make sure they're making the most of their money. First up, investing in property, pros and cons.
Yeah, to summarise, I guess, really quickly, it's property gives you leverage. So it means with a small deposit, you can control a bigger asset. Apart from that, you've got tax benefits. So if you're negatively cash flowed or negatively geared, you can claim some of that back in your taxes. And then, of course, you can use the equity in one property, be it your home or investment property, to go and purchase more properties.
Equity is so powerful.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. But it really comes down to your borrowing capacity. And as we know, interest rates are so high. So when we're looking at the cons, it is getting quite difficult when interest rates go up and you haven't budgeted for that. It can get quite hard on your budget as well at home. And then you've got issues with tenants that could potentially come up. And of course, you've got to put a lot of research in, otherwise you might make the wrong property choice.
Or property can go down.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shares are good but daunting. What's your advice?
Yeah, look, I think it's become so much easier now to purchase shares. There's numerous apps out there, micro investing and things like that. So it's not as hard as it used to be. But in saying that, the pro with it is that you can go in today, purchase, and if you wanted to, you could sell it and get your cash back by the end of the week. You don't really get that with property. You've got to wait 6 weeks at least to try and sell it with an agent and things like that. But with something like shares, you've got at least that accessibility, which makes it a lot easier. But it's also a con, because you might decide, hey, at night time, it's the market's crashing, I'm getting a little scared, I might sell, and you might sell at the low and unfortunately lose some money.
Everyone's got a tip too. I mean, who do you listen to? That's the trouble. Yeah. There's always, I can tell you, there's always someone in WA with a mining tip.
Exactly, yeah, there is. And get advice, though. That's the most important part. Just absolutely get advice.
Yeah.
But are you noticing a shift in demographics? Is there a section of Australians that are going, look, the housing market's way too hot, I'm never going to get into it, so that's gone for me, I'm going to get into shares? Is that, and the way apps are used these days, it's much more accessible, it's easier, you don't have to go through brokers and pay all the fees.
Yeah, definitely.
Is it a shift?
Yeah, definitely, because with property prices being so high, your deposit needs to be higher, and suddenly people are going, it's so out of reach, let me start using those investing muscles with something smaller, and that might be a couple of $100 in your bank account, or it could be a little bit more than that. But if you were to start, you're sort of going, let's build a base with the foundation, and then if you do decide to go into property later, you can use leverage and all the good stuff that comes with it.
Okay, so what's your verdict? How do you work out what the best thing is to do?
Yeah, look, I think it really comes down to people's risk appetite. Going into property can sound all sexy and it's great, but you've also taking on debt and a large amount of it. So I think for me personally, it works well when you've understood the foundations of what you're trying to do, your big vision and your big goal, but it really does come down to your investing thesis and I guess your risk appetite long term.
Yeah, but shares can be risky too. That's a roller coaster. So
yeah, most definitely. And I think it's, when you look at your mortgage, it's almost like a forced savings, whereas with shares, you can go in and again, because you can go in and sell really quickly, unfortunately, people do end up losing money because it's a lot more volatile than, say, something like property.
Okay.
Volatile is the key word at the moment, isn't it? On every front.
Thank you, Ravi. warned against taking on too much debt all the time, aren't we? But could taking on the right kind actually give you more financial flexibility and freedom?
Yeah, our next guest is going to break it down and explain how debt can help create opportunities to grow your wealth. We're joined by personal finance expert Ravi Sharma. Good morning to you, Ravi. Great to see you again. Well, how many of us have grown up hearing, okay, got to pay your debts down, you got to get the house paid off? But some viewers are wondering, what is your different perspective? Because you have an interesting one.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We always get taught like debt is bad, all debt is bad, but there is good debt and there is bad debt. And really defining good debt is how do you attach it to assets that grow? And then the bad debt is when you're taking out debt to maybe go on a holiday that, yes, we can convince ourselves is great at the time, but unfortunately racks up a lot more debt later on for us as well.
Okay, so you've got an example for us to show how not paying down all your debt straight away can work for some people. There's a young couple in their 30s who've saved up $100,000. They're looking to enter the property market and find a $650,000 house they like and put down a 10% deposit plus other costs. If they don't pay more than their scheduled repayments, how might that benefit them?
Yeah, well, if you think about it, right, if you decide that the banks are not my friends, I don't want debt at all, you can go out there, buy a place for $650,000, but you'd have to do it without the help of the bank. So who's got $650K laying around? So instead, you can go in and say, I'm putting in 10%, the bank helps me with the 90%. And that means even if you did have more than that 10% available to you, you can keep that in emergency fund, which means you can stay in the market longer. We all know that there's emergencies that kick in and there's medical emergencies. So if all of our money is tied up into that one property, now we don't have the flexibility to take care of those emergencies and, immediate needs. And that unfortunately leads to a lot of people having to sell their property. So it's all about how do we stay in the market for as long as possible. And the best way to do that is to take on that debt. It gives us flexibility.
Got a nice car, can't pay for the petrol. So for people that are hesitant about taking on debt, because there's a lot of them out there, or even delaying paying it off because it sits in your stomach when you know you've got this money to pay off, what message do you have for them?
Yeah, look, I think it's, one rule doesn't apply to everyone, and that's where you've got to really assess your risk appetite, understand that if you have the buffers in place, then you can go on, take that debt safely, and always keep buffers in mind. So we know that interest rates most likely will go down at some point, but if in the case it doesn't, at least you've got the backup there to allow you to stay in the market for as long as possible.
Okay, Ravi, thank you so much. Really appreciate the insight that you have. And remember too, it's important to seek independent financial advice that takes into account your personal circumstances before making any decision.
Could help you take that first step, rentvesting.
Yeah, so that's when you buy an investment property in an area that suits your budget while you rent in another area that suits your lifestyle. And our next guest is going to show us how it could work for you. For more, we're joined by personal finance content creator Ravi Sharma. Good morning to you. Take us through the benefits of rentvesting.
Yeah, I think the major thing is that young people are finding it so difficult to get onto the property ladder. This is a perfect way to maintain lifestyle without compromising on your weekly budget and still be able to take advantage of property as an investment, I suppose.
Okay, you've given us an example of one of your clients who's actually done this. Elise rents in inner Sydney for $700 a week. She saved $90,000 for a deposit and her borrowing capacity was about $600,000. If she wanted to buy the unit she's in, it was going to cost her $800,000. Her mortgage repayments and other costs would have been about $1,000 a week. Instead, she bought a 4-bedroom property for $500,000 in Queensland. Her costs for that property after getting rental income are about $120 a week. Now she's paying $820 a week all up on her own rent and the house's ongoing costs. That means she's about $180 a week ahead each week. There are the figures. How is Elise doing all that?
Well, she's really happy at the moment because she's not having to fork out so much more above her budget. So she's able to still live in the place that she wants. And that's the big benefit of rentvesting, is you can still maintain your lifestyle by living in the location you want, but you get to invest somewhere that you can afford and the numbers make sense. So for Elise, that property has gone up by $40,000 in the last 6 months. And now she's looking at how do I get a side hustle to go and repeat the process while still being able to live in Pyrmont because, hey, who doesn't want to live in Sydney?
That's the key, right? You want to be able to live and have all the great things that you enjoy in life. The other issue, though, and this is the key one, picking the area, the growth area, to know that that investment will keep up with your lifestyle as your demands increase.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, if you're looking at the risks with something like this, you've got to pick the right property in the right location. Otherwise, you screw yourself over on both ends.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
It comes down to research and having that right team around you. And not everyone has that time either. So it's very important that people go out there, get the right advice, get the right guidance. Because if you can pick out the right property and still be able to maintain your lifestyle, you're loving life, and maybe that's a new holiday later that year as well.
But how do people find that advice? If people are sitting here at home thinking, I'd like to do this, but yeah, there are a lot of houses for sale in a lot of areas around Australia.
Yeah, well, one of the things that you can do is get the right team, which would include a buyer's agent like ourselves. And that's where Elise, you know, found it difficult to do the research by herself. She spent hours trying to do it herself, talk to agents, and they could spin up whatever stories they like. So for us as a buyer's agent, we go and work on Elise's behalf to try and get the best price, but also do all the research for her.
Thanks for coming in, Ravi. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You really do cut through all the jargon and give us a really good understanding of individual case subjects. It's great.
I appreciate it.
We're going to put that case study on our website so people can go through those numbers. Whether you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s or older, having enough money for retirement is something we all need to think about. And if your dream is to travel or really put your feet up, boosting your super balance can help you get there.
Yep, some people are getting very savvy and buying a property through their own self-managed super fund. And our next guest is here to explain how you can take advantage of the real estate shortcut. Ravi Sharma is a personal finance content creator. Good morning to you, Ravi. Many people think superannuation is something that you can just set and forget. Contributions go in from your pay or whatever. Is that just the case?
Well, I mean, at a very base level, that's what you're looking at, is that super is going to hopefully retire you or fund your retirement. But unfortunately, with Australians, we don't really understand how we're not going to end up with enough by the time we retire. So you could use assets like real estate to really boost it up.
So how do you buy a property in your super?
So it's very similar to you buying it in your own names or, you know, outside of super, but there are a couple of differences, mainly that it has to be under a bare trust, things like that. In addition to that, you can't actually go out, take out some equity from one property and buy another. It's very, you know, set standard rules outside of your own name. But in saying that, you can still use a 20% deposit, you can still get in, and it doesn't need to be for your own home. You can still invest into real estate.
Let's go through an example, because you have this couple in their 40s with a combined balance of $300,000 in their self-managed super fund. They could spend about $130,000 paying for a deposit for an apartment or a house worth around $500,000. How could making that purchase potentially increase the amount they have when they retire?
So if you look at average super balances, you're probably at about $435,000 on average, right, by the time you retire. So if you actually used $130,000 like our clients did, you pretty much go and purchase a property for $500K. You could probably find yourself after about 30 years being $500,000 to $600,000 further ahead. Wow. So at that point, you can decide if you want to sell the property, you can, you know, put it into a bank account, you can put it back into the shares or into equity markets, or you can keep the property and then just keep getting that rental income come through. In this case, they ended up purchasing 2 properties, so ended up with $1 million in their super, and by the time they actually end up retiring, they'll have close to about $4.5 million. Again, we've got to keep in mind inflation's a big thing too.
So what are the warnings? What are the warnings you have to look out for? There's always a downside to this.
100%. And I think it really comes down to knowing that this fund is there for your retirement, right? So you can't mess around with it. So there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of regulation, but if you get the right advice with the right people around you, you can navigate through that property market quite well. And it comes down to obviously picking the right asset, whether you're buying it in super or outside of super. You don't want to just buy something, hope that it goes up in value. You want to do the numbers, get the right research and get the right team.
That's great. Ravi, we'll get you back for another example because it's really interesting. Thanks for coming in this time.
No, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you, Ravi.